What happens when the person who destroys your life is your own blood? This is not just a story of fraud, it is a story of betrayal, survival, and forgiveness. A story of how I unmasked the imposter who stole my identity and how I found myself again. Welcome to Olu Beauty African Folktales channel. Here we tell you the way it is. Have you subscribed? If you haven't, please do subscribe, like, comment, and share. Share it with your family and friends. Oh yeah, guys, grab your popcorn, sit jeje, and enjoy yourself. Oh yeah, let's go there. When people talk about identity theft, you imagine stolen ATM cards, hacked social media accounts, or scam emails. You never imagine someone completely taking over your life. But that's exactly what happened to me. My name is Chiamaka Okoro, and this is the story of how I lost everything I thought was mine: my career, my friends, even my dignity, to an imposter who wore my name like a crown, until I discovered the truth that nearly broke me. It was a sunny Saturday morning. I was ironing my dress for my best friend's wedding when there was a knock at the door. Two men in dark suits stood there holding files. They looked like policemen, but their eyes carried a weight I didn't understand. "Are you Miss Chiamaka Okoro?" one of them asked. "Yes," I said, confused. They exchanged glances before one handed me a folded letter and said, "You are hereby summoned for questioning regarding allegations of fraud and embezzlement." The world tilted. I clutched the door frame, my knees weak. "Fraud? Me?" I whispered. My voice was trembling. They didn't care about my shock. They simply wanted me to report to their office on Monday morning or risk arrest. As they left, I saw my neighbors gathered outside, whispering, their eyes darting between me and the men walking away. In their eyes, I was no longer the decent young woman who always greeted them with a smile. No, overnight, I had become a criminal. That was the day my life began to unravel. On Monday, I walked into the investigation office with my heart pounding in my chest. I was innocent, but the cold stares I received made me feel guilty already. They placed documents in front of me, loan applications with my name and signature, credit card statements with purchases I never made, business transactions I knew nothing about. My head spun as I shook my head violently and I said, "This isn't me. I don't even know these people. I didn't take any loan." But the officer leaned back and sneered and said, "Mrs. Okoro, you can deny it all you want, but the evidence is clear. If you don't cooperate, you will go to jail." That night, I cried until my chest ached. I looked at myself in the mirror and asked, how is it possible that someone is out there living as me? The scandal spread like wildfire. My office suspended me without pay, claiming they couldn't keep a suspect on their payroll. My friends stopped picking my calls. Even at church, whispers followed me like shadows. My younger brother Uchenna asked me one night, said, "Chi, are you sure you didn't do those things?" Those words broke me more than the accusations. My own brother doubted me. I stopped eating. I stopped leaving the house. At night, I would lie awake, listening to my heartbeat thundering in my ears, wondering if I was slowly going mad. I thought of ending it all. Yes, standing on the balcony one night, staring down at the street, I thought maybe if I fall all this pain will end. But something inside me whispered and said, not yet. Your story isn't over. Weeks later, as I tried to clear my name, I stumbled upon a shocking clue. One of the fraudulent loan files had an emergency contact number listed. Curious, I dialed it. My hands shook as the phone rang. And then I heard a voice I knew, a voice from my childhood. It was my cousin, Amarachi. Memories flooded back. Amarachi and I had grown up together in Enugu. She was always the quiet one, overshadowed, bitter, envious. When I got into university, she didn't. When I got a good job in Lagos, she remained jobless. And now she has stolen my identity. That night, I confronted her. My heart nearly stopped. I stood at her doorstep, knocking. She opened the door with a smile that quickly froze when she saw me. Chi, what are you doing here? She said. I pushed past her into the room. On her table were credit card bills, all under my name. Why, Amarachi? My voice cracked. Why would you do this to me? She tried to play dumb. I don't know what you are talking about, she said. I slammed the documents onto her table. Bank statements, forged IDs, even CCTV still from a bank. Her face, but with my name. Her lips trembled, her shoulders shook. Then suddenly she burst into anger and said, yes, I did it, she screamed. You always had everything, Chiamaka. The brains, the beauty, the opportunities, while I was nothing, invisible. So I took your life because it should have been mine. Her words cut through me like a knife. I staggered back, tears streaming down my face. This wasn't just fraud. This was betrayal by blood. After everything, I left her apartment shaking, my mind in chaos. How could I send my own cousin to prison? How could I face the rest of the family, knowing the shame it will bring? But on the other hand, if I kept quiet, my own life would be destroyed forever. I was stuck between blood and survival. My mother's words echoed in my head. Family is everything, oh. But I also heard my father's voice. Chi, never let anyone trample on your name. That night, I broke down in prayer. I said, God, show me what to do. Do I forgive her and lose myself, or fight back and destroy her? So, the day the truth came out, my family home turned into a battlefield. I gathered the courage to call a family meeting. My uncles, aunties, cousins, even my aged grandmother all sat in the parlor, fanning themselves, their eyes darting back and forth with suspicion. Amarachi sat across from me, her head bowed, pretending to be innocent, but I was armed with evidence. With trembling hands, I laid the documents on the table, bank papers, forged IDs, even screenshots from CCTV. At first, the room went silent. Then came the explosion. Amarachi, is this true? One of our uncle backed. My grandmother gasped, clutching her wrapper, and she said, Chi, Jesus, Amarachi, is this what you have become? Amarachi's lips quivered before she broke down in tears and said, yes, I did it, she screamed. But do you know why? Because nobody ever saw me. Nobody ever cared. Chiamaka was the star and I was the shadow. I was tired of being nothing. That was why I did it. Her confession ripped the air apart. My mother wailed. My brothers shouted, and my uncles argued over whether to protect her or hand her over to the police. One of my uncles slammed his fist on the table and said, we cannot wash our dirty linen in public. Family is family. We must protect her. But my younger brother, Uchenna, his voice shaking with anger, and he said, "Protect what? Protect her? And let she's life be ruined? No, she must pay for what she did." I sat in the middle of the chaos, silent tears streaming down my face. I didn't recognize my family anymore. The days that followed were the darkest. Word spread through the community like wildfire. And they said, "Did you hear? Sisters, children fighting each other in court. Imagine Amarachi stealing Chiamaka's name. Ah, what kind of shame is this?" People started pointing at me anywhere I go. In the markets, some shook their heads in pity. Others whispered and said that maybe I was lying and trying to destroy Amarachi out of jealousy. Even some family members stopped calling me. They believed Amarachi's tears more than my evidence. One evening, I walked home and found out that someone had written in charcoal on my gate, "Froster." I sank to the ground, my chest tightening as I sobbed. How do you defend yourself when your own blood is the one destroying your name? But just when I thought things couldn't get worse, I discovered something even more terrifying. Amarachi wasn't acting alone. She had a network, a group of fraudsters who specialized in forging documents, stealing identities, and draining accounts. She had been their golden key because she looked so much like me. That was why the CCTV footage was so convincing. Same complexion, similar facial structure. I realized then Amarachi didn't just want to be me. She wanted to erase me. One morning, I received a call from a bank manager. "Miss Okoro," he said cautiously, "are you sure you are not applying for another loan with us? There is a woman here right now claiming to be you." My blood ran cold. I rushed to the bank, and there she was, Amarachi, dressed in a blazer, confidently signing my name. When she saw me walk in, her face drained of cold. The manager looked between us, stunned, and he said, "Wait, oh, there are two of you here." I stood tall, my voice shaking but firm. "No, there is only one Chiamaka, and that," I pointed at Amarachi and said, "is the thief who stole my life." Security was called. Amarachi screamed, fought, begged, cursed, but this time there was no escaping. When Amarachi was finally arrested, the family split into two camps. Some supported me, saying justice had to be served. Others accused me of being wicked, of disgracing the family by handing my cousin over to the police. And they said, "You are heartless, Chiamaka." My aunt shouted one afternoon when she came to see me, and she said, "How can you do this to your sister? Blood is thicker than water." Oh." I broke down, sobbing, and I said, "Auntie, where was that blood when she destroyed my life? When I was called a fraud? When I nearly lost my job? When I wanted to jump from my balcony because I couldn't bear the shame?" My voice echoed in the room, and for a moment, silence fell. But I knew the wounds in my family will never heal easily. Court hearings dragged on for months. Each time I sat in that courtroom facing Amarachi, my heart broke all over again. Sometimes she looked at me with hatred, other times with guilt, but never once did she apologize. At night, I would dream of her face, her voice screaming at me, saying, "You stole my identity." I woke up drenched in sweat, clutching my pillow like it was my only anchor to reality. But through the pain, something new began to grow inside me, a determination, a fire, a voice that said, "Chiamaka, you are stronger than this. They can steal your name, but not your soul. Fight and win." So just when I thought the case was nearing its end, a shocking revelation surfaced. During investigation, the fraud syndicate Amarachi worked with revealed something chilling. Amarachi had been planning to fake my death. Yes, they had a plan to stage an accident to make it look like I had died so that she could take over completely without fear of being exposed. The thought made me sick to my stomach. My own cousin, my blood, wanted me gone forever. The first day of the trial, I walked into the courtroom with my head held high, but my legs trembling. Reporters were outside with flashing cameras, their microphones ready to catch the fraudster they had written so many lies about. Inside, Amarachi sat at the defendant's table, her face painted with false innocence. She wore a simple dress, no makeup, and clutched a Bible as though she were the victim. When her eyes met mine, I saw no remorse, only defiance. The prosecutor laid out the evidence, forged IDs, bank records, CCTV footage, testimonies from fraud syndicate members. Each piece was like a dagger in my heart. But then Amarachi's lawyer stood up, his words like poison, and he said, Your Honor, my client is not guilty. She only acted out of desperation because Chiamaka here has always flaunted her success, belittling Amarachi, making her feel worthless. Amarachi was driven by emotional abuse and envy, something this family has ignored for years. The courtroom gasped. My hands shook. Me? Belittling her? I stood, tears in my eyes, and I said, that is not true. I loved Amarachi like a sister. I shared everything with her, clothes, food, even money when I had little. I never imagined she would repay me with this kind of betrayal, I said. The judge silenced us, but I saw the smirk on Amarachi's lips. She was enjoying this. As the trial continued, more skeletons stumbled out of the closet. It turned out Amarachi had been nursing hatred for me since we were teenagers. She kept diaries, pages filled with venom, describing how she wanted to be me and how she wished I would disappear. But the greatest shock came when a witness revealed that Amarachi had once attempted to forge my university admission letter years ago. She failed then, but the seed of envy had been planted long ago before I knew it. And then the final blow. My aunt, Amarachi's mother, confessed in tears one afternoon outside the courtroom. And she said, Chi, forgive me. I spoiled her. I always compared her to you. I made her feel like you were the standard she could never reach. I planted bitterness in her heart without realizing it. This is partly my fault. Her confession tore me apart. Amarachi wasn't just born jealous. She was raised in the shadow of constant comparison. Still, could that excuse the fact that she nearly ruined my life? As the case dragged on, pressure mounted. Pastors visited me, pleading and saying, Chiamaka, show mercy. Blood is blood. Oh. Some family members begged and said, drop the charges, Chi. Amarachi is young. She made mistakes. Even my grandmother, frail and trembling, held my hand one night and whispered and said, don't let the law separate sisters forever. Forgive her, she said. But how could I forgive someone who planned to erase me completely? I lay awake night after night, torn apart. My heart ached with memories of us as children, running barefoot in the village, laughing, sharing secrets. And then I remembered her screaming in the courtroom and said, I became you because I was tired of being nothing. Could I forgive someone who wanted me dead just so she could live as me? Then the darkest moment came 2 weeks before the final judgment. I returned home late from a hearing, exhausted. As I opened my door, I noticed a letter slipped under the mat. My hands trembled as I picked it up. Inside was a single note written in Amarachi's handwriting, and they read, "If I go down, you are going down with me. You think you've won, but you haven't. One way or another, you will pay." I collapsed to the floor, clutching the letter to my chest, sobbing uncontrollably. I realized Amarachi didn't just envy me, she hated me, truly hated me. And that hatred had no limits. But life has a way of shining light in the darkest corners. One morning, I was invited to speak at a women's support group. I didn't want to go, but my pastor insisted. Hesitantly, I stood before a room of women who had also been betrayed by friends, family, lovers. As I shared my story, something strange happened. Instead of pity, I saw admiration in their eyes. Instead of whispers of shame, I heard claps of encouragement. One woman stood up and said, "Chiamaka, you are proof that no matter what they steal, your name, your money, your dignity, they cannot steal your spirit." Her words pierced me. For the first time, I realized maybe my story wasn't just pain, maybe it was purpose. I walked out of that room stronger, with a new fire in my heart. Amarachi may have tried to destroy me, but I will not let her succeed. As judgment drew near, tension filled the air. The prosecution had built a strong case. Amarachi's guilt was undeniable, but the family still pushed me, begging for mercy, asking me to plead with the judge for leniency. My heart was torn, my mind was heavy, and the world was watching. I knew the judge's gavel could change everything, not just for Amarachi, but for me, for my family, and for the legacy of my name. Would I stand firm and demand justice, or would I bend under the weight of blood and pity, risking my own future again? The courtroom was packed on the morning of the verdict. I sat there, hands clasped, tears in my eyes. As Amarachi was brought in, she looked fragile, but her eyes still carried that familiar fire of envy. And as the judge prepared to speak, I realized this was not just a battle for justice, it was a battle for my soul. The courtroom was overflowing. Even strangers had come to witness the judgment. Journalists filled the front rows, cameras flashing. My heart hammered against my chest as I sat there, my palms cold and clammy. Amarachi was brought in, her hands cupped. She looked thinner, her once glowing face now pale, but her eyes still carried that bitterness that once burned through me like acid. The judge adjusted his glasses and cleared his throat. Silence fell, and he said, "After careful consideration of the evidence, the testimonies presented, and the confessions made," he began, "every ear leaned in. This court finds the defendant, Amarachi Okoro, guilty of identity theft, fraud, and conspiracy." Gasps filled the room. Amarachi flinched but didn't cry. The judge continued and said, "For her crimes, she is hereby sentenced to 10 years in prison with no option of fine." A wave of emotion swept over me: relief, pain, vindication. But before I could breathe, the judge looked at me and said, "However, the complainant, Ms. Chiamaka Okoro, has the right to make a final statement before sentencing is enforced. Do you have anything to say?" All eyes turned to me. The weight of generations, of family, of betrayal sat heavy on my shoulders. I rose slowly, my legs trembling. I looked at Amarachi. She stared back at me, defiant but broken. For a moment, I saw not the criminal who destroyed my life, but the little girl I once played with, the cousin who shared roasted corn with me under the mango tree. Tears blurred my vision. My lord, I said, my voice quivering, this case has not only been about fraud, it has been about betrayal by blood. I came here fighting for my name, my dignity, my future, and today I stand vindicated. Justice has spoken. I paused, choking back a sob. Then I continued. But as much as my heart bleeds, I refuse to let hatred define me. Amarachi took so much from me, but I will not let her take my ability to forgive. I will not beg for her freedom because actions have consequences. But I release her from my heart. I forgive her, not for her sake, but for mine. A gasp went through the room. Amarachi's lips trembled. For the first time, I saw her eyes soften. The judge nodded gravely and said, very well, the sentence stands. Let justice take its course. Then, after the final judgment, the months that followed were a whirlwind. Newspapers splashed my story on their front pages and they read, Woman fights cousin who stole her identity and wins. Family betrayal ends in prison sentence. But more importantly, I began to receive messages from strangers, people who had been scammed, betrayed, or shamed. Chiamaka, your courage gave me hope. Because of your story, I found the strength to report my own abuser. You are proof that even when family fails, God still lifts us up. Each message was like balm to my wounds. Slowly, the shame that had crushed me transformed into purpose. I started speaking at women's groups, churches, even conferences. My voice trembled at first, but soon it carried strength. I told them and said, they can steal your name, your money, even your reputation, but they can never steal your spirit. That belongs to God and God alone. Months later, one day, I received a letter from prison. It was from Amarachi. My hands shook as I opened it. Inside, her handwriting spilled across the page and they read, Chi, I don't know if you will ever believe me, but I am sorry. I let jealousy destroy me. I let bitterness consume me. I hated you because I thought you were my enemy. But you were never the problem. I was. Thank you for forgiving me, even when I didn't deserve it. Maybe prison is where I need to be to find myself again. Tears streamed down my face as I folded the letter. For the first time, I felt peace. Looking back now, I realized something profound. Amarachi tried to erase me so she could live as me. But in trying to destroy me, she pushed me into my true calling. Today, I am not just a survivor, I am a voice for others. I stand on stages and tell my story. I mentor young women. I teach them to guard their identity, not just on paper, but in their hearts. Because the truth is this, your real identity is not in your name or your job or even your family. Your real identity is in who God says you are, and that no imposter can ever steal. Thank you for watching. This is where our story ends. But before we conclude it, let's look into our moral lessons. Guard your identity, not just physically, but emotionally and spiritually. Comparison destroys. Envy and jealousy are seeds that grow into dangerous actions. Betrayal hurts, but forgiveness heals. True healing begins when you choose not to be enslaved by hatred. Family is important, but justice is necessary. Blood ties should never excuse evil actions. Your true identity is in God. No matter what is stolen, who you are in Christ can never be stolen. In the end, Amarachi lost her freedom, but I found my voice. My story is a reminder that no matter what is stolen, your money, your reputation, even your name, Your true identity can never be taken because your worth is not in what people say, but in who God created you to be. This is where our story ends. Thank you once again for watching. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe for more powerful African stories that will inspire and transform your heart. And don't forget to leave your comments in the comment section. Tell us what you feel about the action Chiamaka took. And also touch the bell button so that you will be notified each time we put out new video. Remember, your identity is priceless. Guide it, live it, and never let anyone steal it. God bless you all. Thank you for watching. Love you. Bye bye.